health news. And if you're using non-sugar sweeteners, that's NSS, in a bid to lose weight or reduce the risk of some diseases, well, then think again. Synthetic sweeteners are no different to sugar, and they don't help in losing weight, according to the latest report by the World Health Organization, and they might be doing more harm than good. All right, well, to talk more about this, we're now joined by Dr. Ambrish Mittal, Chairman Endocrinology and Diabetes Max Healthcare, and Dr. Subhash Wangnu, Head Obesity, Diabetes and Endocrinology, Apollo Hospital, New Delhi. Thank you so much, doctors, for joining us on the program. So first and foremost, Dr. Mittal, if you can explain this World Health Organization report, it must be of concern to many people because, you know, so many have for so many years been using these sweeteners.
So thank you for having me here. So over the years, there are numerous studies that have come out that have linked these artificial sweeteners or non-sugar sweeteners, as we call them, with various kinds of adverse outcomes. Now, the concept is that while these sweeteners are a good substitute for sugar in terms of taste, but they may not necessarily be accomplishing what they set out to do. So let me explain this, that in the case of diabetes, they will sort of take care of your sugar craving at that point, But if you're using them to really reduce calories, to try and lose weight, this recent analysis from the WHO, which included 283 studies, both randomized trials as well as observational studies, has shown that artificial sweeteners do not help non-diabetics in losing weight. In fact, there may be a slight increase in risk of diabetes, and some people have even suggested a risk of stroke and high blood pressure. So I think people who are using artificial sweeteners or non-sugar sweeteners in the hope of reducing their calories from sugar and therefore reducing their body weight, I think that needs to be looked at very carefully. In fact, they were never really supposed to be for weight reduction. They were only supposed to be for people with diabetes and try to sort of satisfy their sugar craving.
All right, but they have become a part of every, dieters, what they eat and how they try and avoid sugar. Dr. Wangnu, and it's very concerning because we know that diabetes is such a huge problem in our country, and to now, realize that these and the NSS could actually be helping in, future development of diabetes.
Yes, absolutely, you're right. Dr. Mittal told about this evidence-based study, systemic review and the meta-analysis, and they have shown there's an increased risk of the development type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and increase in mortality in the adults. The reason being because people think that these NSS have some nutritional value, but they have no nutritional value, 0 calories, and the chemicals they have, like many of the beverages, they contain aspartame, like Coke Zero, the Pepsi Light, which are very toxic to the human being, and we don't know what damage they are causing. And the risk of developing diabetes has already told very clearly that there is no effect on the body fat in adults and as well as in children. And this was basically, the news was broken by Francisco Branca, who is the WHO Director for the Nutrition and the Food Safety. So I'm sure most of the people who are banking upon the artificial sweetener in diabetes, we tell them it is better to have 1 or 2 crystals of the sugar rather than having the artificial NSS in your diet.
Dr. Wangnu, only those people who have diabetes should actually be, using these non-sugar sweeteners, because and they've not been a part of this study. So only those who have diabetes, since you have to avoid sugar, only those people should, occasionally use this.
No, usually as an endocrinologist, we don't tell the patient to use the artificial sweetener, because apart from the study which has done in a non-diabetic, what we have seen in our patient that having said that non-NSS, they tend to take ice creams with the artificial sweetener, they want to take sweets with the artificial sweetener, they want to take chocolate, that add on to the calories. So we in diabetes, we say strict no to the NSS, because that adversely impact their blood sugar, but they tend to eat everything which contains the NSS, and which is not true. Which is not true. So every diabetic, I avoid giving the NSS, particularly in children is a big no. In pregnant diabetes, a big no. And in diabetes, honestly, they will start consuming so much of artificial sweetener-based beverages, cold drink, sweets, ice cream. So this is very bad.
Right. So I guess I'll have to cut out my, no sugar ice cream right now. But Dr. Mittal, so what do you advise? And also, what about gourd and other, brown sugar, etc.? That still falls under sugar. So that's still something you can use. And perhaps this Indian habit of, giving our children milk with lots of sugar, 2 spoons of sugar, chai with 2 spoons of all this, we should now stop and inculcate good habits right from the start?
So firstly, natural sugar substitutes like jaggery, as you said, they're actually equally bad in terms of calories. So they may be having other constituents which may be good, like iron or something else. But the fact is that if you're advising your people with diabetes to substitute white sugar with these other sugars, natural sugars, that's not very wise because they are the same.
No, I'm not advising anybody. I was just asking you for a clarification.
No, I'm just saying if one is advising. I didn't mean you.
Sure.
I'm thinking one is advising, naturally occurring sugars. Other than sugar, they are the same in terms of their calorie intake and in terms of. So I think that's important to understand. The other important point is I'm not as harsh as Dr. Wagnu on the use of artificial sweeteners. I do not recommend them. But if someone asks for them, I say you can have 1 or 2 a day, because the causality data showing clearly that using small amounts of these sweeteners results in adverse outcomes is a bit hazy. It's all association data, right? So therefore we say, yeah, you can have a little bit. The challenge you already outlined, that people think that then low calorie sweets or low calorie beverages they can have in any amount. And that becomes a big, big problem. The other thing which is very interesting is some of these, among the non-sugar sweeteners, the artificial sweeteners, which are very sweet, aspartame and that whole group. Now, What happens is it is said that it trains the brain to not appreciate less sweet objects like fruits. So there are lots of things happening there. There are issues about insulin resistance. There are also issues about gut microbes. Now it is said that they can alter gut microbes. But having said that, all world organizations like the American Diabetes Association or European Association don't ban these for people with diabetes. They can be used in limited quantity. But yes, more and more data is coming, which tells us to be very cautious in using them in large amounts for prolonged periods.
All right. And all right, I'm running out of time. But Dr. Wagnu, last comments on this issue?
Yes, absolutely. Ambi said that you can allow 1 or 2, but my experience that if you allow a little bit, the patient go overboard. So I always tell them to be cautious. It is better not to have, and rather than be happy and not to have any long-term consequences.
Probably when you tell them just don't have, they probably have that 1 or 2 because
absolutely.
Patients take
if
things
you
lightly.
Tell them 1 or 2, they will start taking more.
Right, and very concerning because we know a lot of, cold drinks these days, 0 calorie, no sugar. So that is something that people do tend to consume in large numbers, with every meal, Dr. Wagnu.
Toxic. I think I tell my patient to wash their toilet with those 0 sugar cold drinks. That is my sentence to them, and they just get baffled. Doc, what we are talking? This contains, this is a poison for you. What we are consuming. So a big no to all these beverages which contain the artificial NSS.
All right. Well, thank you so much, doctors, for joining us. And a very important, guideline given out by the World Health Organization for people's, long-term health. And something they've also advised is that to, get used to not having sugar or less sugar. And that is something that should be inculcated from a young age.